Gu Xiaoxiao and I were in love for 7 years. At the engagement banquet, the MC asked her if she would marry me. She said yes, but with one condition. While the guests thought she was trying to liven up the atmosphere, she was looking at the guests seated at the tables with a pained expression on her face. I got pregnant with my ex-boyfriend's child through artificial insemination, and the child is already 3 months old. I hope you can understand, that's all. After she said this, the whole room erupted in an uproar. I wanted an explanation, but she said she hadn't cheated on me, it was just artificial insemination. I trembled with anger and bitterness. But she said, Howren always wanted a child of his own, was I wrong to help him fulfill his wish? I was just helping someone else have a child, what's wrong with that? Why are you so angry? At first I just thought that Gu Xiaoxiao had put on weight, but now I understand. The reason her stomach was slightly bulging was that she was pregnant with another man's child. 1. I felt like a drowned rat, running as fast as I could, ignoring the stares of the passers-by. I ran home in one breath, looked at my disheveled self in the mirror, and couldn't calm my heart for a long time as I thought about what Gu Xiaoxiao had just said. Looking at the familiar yet strange house, I couldn't help but think about the 7 years of relationship with Gu Xiaoxiao. It was clear that we were just one step away from a happy ending, but why did things turn out like this? I gulped down glass after glass of white wine, trying to numb myself with alcohol. In the evening, Gu Xiaoxiao returned. She pinched her nose, looked at the bottle of wine in my hand with disgust, and said, Didn't you promise me before to drink less in the future? Why are you still drinking from the bottle? I'm just concerned about your health, why do you take my words so lightly? I was silent for a long time, and spoke hoarsely. Never mind that, let's talk about the baby in your belly. So that's why you're so angry. At the engagement banquet today, in front of so many guests, you just left without saying goodbye. How could you let me save face? I suddenly felt a bolt of thunder strike me. If I'm ashamed of that, then what about her announcing at my engagement banquet that she was pregnant with another man's child and demanding that I accept it? Yes, some time ago I had an artificial insemination with Howren without your consent. His wife is the only daughter of a wealthy family, spoiled since childhood, afraid of pain, and unwilling to give birth to Howren. Howren posted some child-seeking signs in his Weibo every day. No one wanted a child of their own more than him. I was just fulfilling his wish, what's wrong with that? Hearing this, I could no longer control my emotions. Fine, you're right, you're all right, I'm the one who's wrong. I deserve to be cuckolded, to have my fiancée admit on her own engagement banquet that she's pregnant with another man's child, and to be asked to accept the child. Gu Xiaoxiao became even more aggressive when she heard me lose my temper. Xiao Jinyu, why are you shouting at me? I've explained everything very clearly, and you're arguing with me over such a trivial matter. Are you even a man? Oh my God, my values in life are crumbling. Such a ridiculous thing has become a trivial matter in her mouth. What do you want? You're not convinced, are you? Xiao Jinyu, listen carefully. I swear to God that I have never cheated on you. The baby in my belly is the result of artificial insemination. Howren and I have absolutely done nothing to betray you. At this point, I was a little drunk, and I sat down on the sofa with a thud. What's the point of you telling me this now? The baby is already in my belly, and whether it was the result of artificial insemination or not seems to be less important. You don't need to keep persuading me to accept this, I'm sure no man could accept something like this. Gu Xiaoxiao, let's not get married, let's break up. Upon hearing my words, Gu Xiaoxiao's eyes suddenly reddened. Xiao Jinyu, you're going to abandon me because of such a trivial matter, right? I, Gu Xiaoxiao, am not unwanted. Since you're breaking up with me, let's do it. I'm sick of this woman. Without waiting for her to say anything more, I grabbed my luggage and walked out of the room. At this point, the relationship between Gu Xiaoxiao and I came to a complete end. The cool breeze touched my cheeks, and my drunkenness faded a little. Looking at the quiet and deserted street, I thought of some past events with Gu Xiaoxiao. We met in college. At that time, she was recognized as the campus beauty queen by our entire university, and there were countless people pursuing her. At that time, I was just an ordinary boy with an ordinary appearance and family. In the second half of the first year, she and Li Howren officially announced their relationship, which meant that the campus beauty queen had found her one and only. My classmates sent their blessings, praising them as a match made in heaven. But the good times didn't last long. In his second year, Li Howren was taken to the UK by his uncle to study abroad. It is said that his uncle is very powerful in the UK. Because Li Haoran lost his parents at a young age, his uncle has always treated him like his own son and would not allow him to date an ordinary girl. With no choice, the two eventually broke up. Gu Xiaoxiao was depressed for a long time because of this. Later, in the vast crowd, she set her sights on me. The school flower was after me, and I was overjoyed. What reason was there to refuse? However, after we got together, we were not accepted by our classmates. Because my family was really ordinary, everyone felt that I was not worthy of the school flower. Even so, Gu Xiaoxiao resolutely stood by my side, telling me not to listen to these people. She loved me, and she would love me well for the rest of her life. At that time, I suddenly felt that I had found true love, and I regarded those who did not look favorably on us as jealous. She was my greatest motivation at that time. Being with her, I began to work hard and, after graduation, was admitted to graduate school. For her, after graduating from graduate school, I gave up a well-paid job in Shanghai and stayed in the Northeast for what I thought was love. After working hard for several years, I had saved enough money for a bride price and to buy a car and a house. I never expected that I would get married so soon, but then this happened. I had always thought that I would grow old with Gu Xiaoxiao and be happy together forever. However, everything was ready, but the east wind finally stopped. This whole surrogacy thing also made me realize one thing: Li Haoran has always been in Gu Xiaoxiao's heart, and Li Haoran's place in her heart is far higher than mine. I gave up a high-paying job and worked hard for so many years, only to end up with nothing in return, and I have become the biggest joke. 2. The next morning, when I had a splitting headache, I got a call from Gu Xiaoxiao. "Jinyu, why did you block me on WeChat? Do you know how worried I was when I couldn't get in touch with you? We're fine. I'm supposed to go to the hospital today to check on the baby's development. Usually, Haoran goes with me, but he has something urgent to do today. I can't be alone while I'm pregnant. We're like family. Will you go with me? I promise you that after the baby is born, I'll also call you Dad." I smiled slightly, once again shocked by Gu Xiaoxiao's God-level logic. "I don't know how you actually managed to say those words. I've been a cuckold for 3 months, are you not going to let me go, and are you going to keep putting this cuckold hat on my head for the rest of my life? I don't need you to call the child you have with someone else Dad. Don't say things like that again in the future, we've already broken up, and I'm under no obligation to take you to the hospital. I wish you and Li Haoran happiness. Look what you're saying, Haoran has a family." Gu Xiaoxiao's voice softened on the other end of the line, and for the first time in so many years, she caved in front of me. "Jinyu, this has already happened, and it really isn't a big deal. Are you still unable to let go? We've been in love for 7 whole years, and we definitely have feelings for each other. How many 7 years are there in life? Last night, when you weren't by my side, I realized that I can't live without you. I sincerely apologize for all the hurtful things I said and did to you. It's been so long since that incident, and after the baby is born, we will eventually have to give the house back to Haoran. By then, we can still have our own world. 7 years of relationship, we can't just let go. Let's make up." I could no longer hold back my emotions and exploded. "I'll tell you one last time, we're breaking up. I won't go to the hospital with you, and don't call me again." After saying this, I didn't wait for her to respond, and I just pressed the hang up button. I didn't put the phone down for long before the phone rang again. I glanced at the screen and saw it was a strange number. I answered with some confusion, and a teasing voice came from the other end of the line. "Jinyu, I hear that you are now a high-achieving graduate student, and you earn more than 500,000 yuan a month in the Northeast. Someone with such a good job and such a beautiful girlfriend really envies you." Of course I knew that this person was Li Haoran. I responded with a sneer. "It should be me envying you. You are really charming to be able to get someone else's fiancé to bear your child." Just then, the voice of Gu Xiaoxiao came from the other end of the line, and her attitude towards me, who had originally wanted to argue with her, changed 180 degrees. "Xiao Jinyu, who the hell are you? Can you speak properly? Who are you trying to impress? You are really rude." I suddenly didn't know what to say. Obviously, Li Haoran had provoked the situation in the first place, and I was just returning the aggression, but I was being called arrogant and rude. I didn't really want to say anything more to someone like that, so I went straight to the point. "Is there a problem or not? If not, that's it." Li Haoran spoke again. "Jinyu, I'm asking you not to be so hostile towards Xiao and me. I've heard about what happened between you two. We're all adults here, so let's not act like children. After all, you've been together for 7 years, so how can you just let go? I was supposed to accompany Xiao Xiao to the hospital today, but I had a sudden business matter at work and couldn't get away, so I thought of you. I laughed out loud. These two people took turns calling me PUA, and even if I have a good temper, at this point I have reached the point of no tolerance. I trouble you not to point your finger at me, and even less to interfere with my decisions, okay? And I beg you not to think of me, because I and Gu Xiao Xiao have broken up, completely and utterly. Li Haoran on the other end of the phone finally lost his temper. He stopped speaking so politely and revealed his true nature as he yelled at the phone. Xiao Jinyu, you say you are a big man, but how can you be so narrow-minded? It is too childish to break up with Xiao Xiao over this. The whole thing started because I wanted a child, and Xiao Xiao was only trying to fulfill my wish. As friends, I don't think she did anything wrong. And before this, I have repeatedly confirmed that Xiao Xiao discussed this matter with you and you have already agreed to it. Have you no shame? I said coldly into the phone. Li Haoran, I really ask you not to argue anymore. If you were a gentleman, you would not have done such a ridiculous thing. I am not ready for you to point your finger at me. Let's just leave it at that. It's really annoying to communicate with people like you. Gu Xiao Xiao on the other end of the phone was instantly furious. What kind of attitude is that? Let me tell you, I don't care what you say, but don't say anything about Haoran. I agreed to the whole thing, and I don't blame him. As I listened to Gu Xiao Xiao defend Li Haoran with all her might, my heart, which had already died, became even colder. Gu Xiao Xiao, when we were together, who told me that they were still young and didn't want their bodies to change shape too soon, so they weren't considering having children before the age of 35. I remember I agreed to this, didn't I? And then you went back on your word and did this. Don't you feel like you've betrayed your own original intentions? If you get pregnant with Li Haoran's child, do you think your body won't change shape after giving birth? You patted your chest and asked yourself, am I being fair to me? What makes you think you can ask to get back together with me? After I berated her, Gu Xiao Xiao on the other end of the phone was obviously feeling guilty and she stopped talking. Li Haoran stood up for himself and said sarcastically, you narrow-minded men really deserve it. Xiao Xiao is more than enough for you. You are in a blessed situation and don't know how blessed you are. She is just a girl, how can you say such things about her? Take a good look at yourself in the mirror. It's a miracle that Xiao Xiao even likes you. You're such a petty person, and you deserve to get nothing in life. 3. Li Haoran, does your wife know about this? What will she think if she finds out? I asked with a sneer. Hearing me ask, Li Haoran's tone wavered a little, obviously guilty. Just then, Gu Xiao Xiao's voice came over the phone. Cindy knows about this, doesn't she, Haoran? As she said this, Gu Xiao Xiao looked at Li Haoran. I suddenly provoked him. Li Haoran, do you dare to tell the truth like a man? Does your wife, Tang Cindy, know about this? Li Haoran on the other end of the phone was breathing heavily, clearly agitated by my words. Haoran, there's nothing to be ashamed of. You should tell him that Cindy knows about this. Gu Xiao Xiao persuaded Li Haoran. Li Haoran let out a small sigh. I'm sorry Xiao Xiao, I lied to you before. In fact, Cindy never knew about the artificial insemination from beginning to end. Gu Xiao Xiao's expectant voice came to an abrupt end. Li Haoran, do you know the consequences of this? If Tang Cindy finds out, not to mention whether you can withstand her family's influence, you have already broken the law. Li Haoran stubbornly said. No, if things really come to that, we'll just say that the child is wanted by both of us. In that case, I will at most be accused of cheating. After all, it is just a matter of moral depravity, and the law cannot do anything to me. Gu Xiao Xiao cried out in desperation. How can you be so naive? If it really comes to that, and Tang Cindy says that she knew about this from the beginning, then what we have done will become surrogacy, which is illegal in China. Even though the child's egg is not hers, do you think that with the Tang family's abilities, there is no way to get you in? Why did you lie to me? You clearly told me before that Tang Cindy knew about this. How will this end now that things have come to this? What am I going to do if you really go to jail? Now that Jinyu and I have broken up, do you want me and the baby to go hungry after you go to jail? Li Haoran began to lose his temper. Obviously, none of this had occurred to him. He seemed to have thought of that terrifying image. What's the point of arguing with me now that it's happened? All I wanted was a child of my own, where was there time to think about that? It's all your fault, you bitch. Why did you agree to my condition back then? If I really get sent to prison, I won't let you off the hook. Gu Xiaoxiao on the other end of the phone fell silent. She didn't expect the men who held the most important place in her heart to say the most ruthless things. Li Haoran suddenly felt that he had lost his temper. He was afraid that Gu Xiaoxiao would blow the whistle, and hurriedly comforted her. I'm sorry, Xiaoxiao, I was in a hurry and shouldn't have yelled at you. Trust me, I can keep this quiet, and it will never get back to Cindy's ears. Besides, Cindy is no fool, and in the face of justice, she will still give me the benefit of the doubt. Without solid evidence, no one can be sure of the truth of this matter. Gu Xiaoxiao cried as she said things like she believed him. Yes, things have come to this, and she has no choice but to trust him. Listening to the conversation between this pair of unlucky lovers, I impatiently wanted to hang up. But then came Gu Xiaoxiao's threatening words. Xiao Jinyu, I forbid you to tell anyone about this. Haha, didn't you guys say before that I was a narrow-minded person? Is it useful for you to say this to a narrow-minded person? I laughed. Li Haoran warned. You're just a loser who can't even keep his wife. Who would believe the words of a loser like you? And I don't believe you'll be able to produce any hard evidence. You'll end up losing more than you gain. After you've ruined my reputation, do you think my wife, Tang Xini, will let you off lightly? I didn't want to continue arguing, and I didn't want to listen to their threats, so I hung up the phone. In fact, it's easy to figure out whether Tang Xini knew about this. I'm not making this up. Li Haoran's wife, Tang Xini, is the apple of the Tang family's eye, and I don't believe she could tolerate her husband having a child with another woman. Even if he was afraid of the pain and sought a surrogate, he would still use his own eggs, so why would he choose to use Gu Xiaoxiao's eggs? Therefore, I concluded that Tang Xini's fear of the pain of childbirth and other such words were purely excuses made up by Li Haoran to allow Gu Xiaoxiao to be artificially inseminated, and there must be some other hidden circumstances. Perhaps it was Li Haoran and Gu Xiaoxiao who had rekindled their old romance, but I asked a friend to look it up, and found that Li Haoran and Tang Xini had not divorced. With the Tang family's influence in the area, I believe Li Haoran definitely wouldn't dare to admit to Gu Xiaoxiao so openly, let alone let Tang Xini know that they had a child together. The phone call just now has made the situation very clear. In order to make Gu Xiaoxiao accept artificial insemination, Li Haoran lied to Gu Xiaoxiao and said that Tang Xini knew about it, when in fact Tang Xini didn't know anything about it. What puzzles me is what motivation could possibly make Li Haoran take such a risk. It's none of my business, and I don't want to go into the details. 4. 3 days later, that strange number called my phone again. I knew it was Li Haoran. When I answered, I said coldly, "What's up? The reunion is in a couple of days. I just got back from abroad, so the monitor assigned me the task of gathering everyone together and getting reacquainted. You're not going to chicken out just because we had a little tiff, are you?" I looked at the calendar and sure enough, the annual class reunion was in 2 days. Gu Xiaoxiao's voice sounded doubtful on the other end of the line. "Haoran, what did you tell him to do? If the monitor asks, just say he's not coming. It really affects my mood to see him. After all, we're classmates, it's not good to leave anyone out." I know Li Haoran said this, but he actually had other thoughts in mind. He wanted to embarrass me in front of all the classmates, and he wanted to show them that as long as he returned from abroad, the class flower would still be his. And I was only good enough to be the class flower's backup. Li Haoran did all this because I had been with Gu Xiaoxiao, so he had always held a grudge. After hesitating for a moment, I finally agreed to this class reunion. Before this class reunion, I met with Tang Xini. Tang Xini didn't put on airs as a rich girl and agreed very readily. It turned out that Tang Xini had long known about Li Haoran's affairs, she just hadn't revealed it yet because she felt the timing wasn't right. We talked a lot about marriage, about love, and about our views on scumbag men and bitchy women. Perhaps because we were both victims of this matter, we got along very well. Tang Xini had a lot of information in her hands, and from her I also learned a shocking secret about Li Haoran's family. After we parted, our fists met and we smiled at each other. 2 days later, I came to the class reunion after work as promised. When I opened the door to the private room, many classmates had already arrived, and in the middle of the crowd were Gu Xiaoxiao and Li Haoran. The two of them were surrounded by their classmates like the moon around the stars. "You two are back together, you two are a true match made in heaven." After all, they were the school's most popular boy and girl, and I'm sure when their child is born, it will be a handsome boy or a beautiful girl. And they will be a handsome guy or a beautiful girl. Can my child be my godmother when she is born? I will give you a red envelope. It really turns out that you two are the most compatible, no one else will do. To be honest, I didn't think that Xiao Xiao and Xiao Jinyu would get together. As soon as I entered the room, I was crowded by people arranged in advance by Li Haoran and Gu Xiaoxiao. Hey, isn't this Jinyu? Appearing in front of Xiao Xiao and Haoran, don't you feel a little defeated? It's really not embarrassing. I just wondered who it was, and it turned out to be the Jinx. Why did he come? Who asked him to come? The monitor slammed the table and shouted angrily. Jinyu, I asked him to come. Why shouldn't he come? He's not one of our classmates. I cast a grateful glance at the monitor and found a corner to sit down. I knew that these classmates, relying on Li Haoran's power, dared not offend him, so they could only bully me. I didn't feel uncomfortable either. I hid in the corner without saying a word, hoping that the time would pass quickly. I just decided not to attend these reunions in the future. I didn't want to get into trouble, but trouble always seemed to find me. Li Haoran kept looking at me with a knife in his smile, as if he was holding back some bad idea. Halfway through the reunion, I went to the bathroom. To get back to my seat, I had to pass by Li Haoran and Gu Xiaoxiao. I had just returned to my seat and hadn't sat down yet when Li Haoran shouted. Who patted my wife's stomach? My wife is more than 3 months pregnant, don't you know? I guessed that a scene of framing someone might follow, but this time I wouldn't put up with it anymore, and sent my location to Tangsini. Li Haoran pretended to get up in a hurry. At the moment, he was in Oscar-winning mode, pointing at Gu Xiaoxiao's stomach and saying that someone wanted to frame their baby. A female classmate with a shrill voice took the lead and said. We all know who did it without even thinking about it. Xiao Jinyu, come forward and give an explanation. If I didn't do it, what explanation do you want from me? My stomach hurts. Gu Xiaoxiao covered her stomach and cooperated with Li Haoran. She looked at me and said. Even if we're not together anymore, you don't have to be so vicious. You actually went after Xiao Xiao's baby. Xiao Jinyu doesn't look like a good person, and he's just trying to get back at me for being cuckolded. Yes, what a jerk. Why don't we just call the police? Li Haoran looked at me with a sinister expression. Xiao Jinyu, I know you're angry with me because I've reconciled with Xiao Xiao. Even so, you could have taken it out on me alone, but you actually dared to touch my wife and child. Shouldn't you give me an explanation? He came up to me and grabbed me by the collar. Now go and kneel down in front of my wife and apologize. I didn't do anything, so why should I apologize? The female classmate who had led the charge once again fanned the flames. Will you stop arguing, okay? Out of all the people here, you're the only one with a motive. You're jealous that Xiao Xiao and Haoran got back together, so who else are you going to blame? Don't let him off. Kneel down and apologize to Haoran and Xiao Xiao, or you won't be able to leave this room today. I really didn't expect Xiao Jinyu to be so cruel to his former girlfriend. You ungrateful brat. You didn't know how to be educated when your mother gave birth to you, did you? Then let me tell you why. After Li Haoran finished speaking, he suddenly punched me in the face. I was unprepared and was knocked to the ground by this punch. Immediately, he picked up the bottle on the table and greeted me fiercely. Seeing this, many righteous students came forward to help, punching and kicking me. Gu Xiaoxiao acted as a troublemaker on the side, pretending to persuade while taking the opportunity to kick me a few times when no one was paying attention. Just as the scene was in chaos, the monitor took the lead to stop the farce. The monitor asked with an iron face and no mercy, Jianyu, tell the truth, did you really slap Gu Xiaoxiao's stomach with the intention of knocking their baby out? Thank you. I responded inappropriately, patting the monitor's shoulder and saying, I can't explain this with words, but the surveillance camera will tell us the answer. But right now, I have something more important to say. I have been repeatedly screwed over, and I have tolerated them for too long, but they have been getting worse every time. Even a clay figure has some anger left in it, let alone me. I spat out a mouthful of blood and pointed at Li Haoran and Gu Xiaoxiao. You two bullies never seem to have enough, and I had already let it go and let you two win. You two have repeatedly insulted me in public, and today you even poured dirty water over my head. Since you two have brought this on yourselves, I will let you two die. I cleared my throat and prepared to tell the shocking news that Tangsini had told me. I went to the stereo, turned off the music, and spoke in a loud voice. I have a shocking piece of news to tell you all. In fact, this child is not Li Haoran's at all, but his uncle's. Li Haoran traveled thousands of miles from the UK to steal his uncle's sperm from the hospital sperm bank, and then used Gu Xiaoxiao's body to give birth to the child, in order to get his uncle's inheritance. 5. Everyone present was suddenly at a loss for words, not knowing where an English uncle had popped up from. Even Gu Xiaoxiao looked at me with a stupid look on her face. Xiao Jianyu, you haven't been hit on the head and gone stupid, have you? What are you talking about? This child is mine and Howren's, there's no way that's a lie. On second thought, Gu Xiaoxiao is actually quite pathetic, being used by Li Howren as a breeding tool, and now she's even defending Li Howren. Li Howren's eyes flickered twice. He seemed to have no idea how I knew the truth, and in front of so many classmates, of course he didn't dare admit it. Xiao Jianyu, I don't know how you came up with these rumors, and you even made up an uncle out of thin air. You are just trying to divert attention and cover up the fact that you have hurt my wife and child. As soon as Li Howren said this, his followers suddenly seemed to have discovered my intentions. Howren is right, this jinx is just trying to divert attention. Don't fall for his tricks, he just wants to cover up the facts of his crimes. This vicious person should be reported to the police and handed over to the police. Through the crowd, I looked at Li Howren with a fierce gaze and spoke in a very cold voice. Li Howren, am I the one spreading rumors, or are you afraid to admit what you've done? Since you are so stubborn, then just say who the father of Gu Xiaoxiao's baby is. If you still dare to say that the baby is yours at this time, then I'm sorry, you won't get a single penny of your uncle's inheritance. I turned on the recording system on my phone and walked towards Li Howren step by step. I could clearly see that his eyes were panicking at the moment, and as I advanced, he began to subconsciously back away. I kept pushing Li Howren to the corner, convinced that he would never give up such a large inheritance and would definitely tell the truth. Sure enough, after carefully calculating the pros and cons in his mind, his eyes suddenly hardened, as if he had made up his mind to make a decision. After I kept my phone against his mouth, he gritted his teeth and said, "Yes, you are telling the truth. All of this is true." Upon hearing this, the entire audience erupted in uproar. The female classmate who had just taken the lead shouted in a very unpleasant manner. "Holy shit, Gu Xiaoxiao, you really have become Li Howren's tool for procreating in order to gain leverage over the inheritance." Gu Xiaoxiao sat down on the ground with a thud, and he looked at Li Howren with disbelief on his face. "It's not true, you have to tell me, this is not true, you said you loved me. You told me you liked children, and you used that to drive a wedge between Jianyu and me. You said if I helped you have a child, you would take me away. You said you had a lot of money abroad, is this what you meant?" Gu Xiaoxiao said, tears involuntarily sliding down the corners of her eyes. Li Howren swallowed audibly, knowing that if he admitted to this, he would bear the blame. "Xiaoxiao, listen to me. If I can get that huge inheritance, I can take you abroad and live a better life. Even now, with my uncle's child in your belly, are you still afraid of not getting the inheritance?" Gu Xiaoxiao shook her head while crying. "If you truly love me, I would rather live a poor life with you. But now the nature of things has changed. You keep saying you love me, but you end up treating me like this. Doesn't your conscience ache?" Everyone present, except for me, was in an uproar. The students wanted to stand on the moral high ground and accuse Li Howren, but they were afraid to speak out due to Li Howren's connections. Looking at the ugly faces of these people, I felt a burst of laughter. Li Howren didn't dare to look directly at Gu Xiaoxiao. He looked at me and said spitefully, "I don't know where you heard all this, but what does it have to do with you? You're not qualified to tell me what to do with my family's affairs." Then a voice spoke in broken Chinese, and a Britishman appeared in the doorway. He walked slowly into the box and looked at Li Howren and said, "I am the lawyer hired by your uncle. Now that your uncle has passed away, as the lawyer he entrusted before his death, I have the right to take over these matters, don't I?" "Oh, yes. According to your uncle's will, I am now employed by your wife, Tang Sini." Upon hearing this, the students began to pretend to be confused again. What? Li Howren had a wife before. So he is now with Gu Xiaoxiao, and Gu Xiaoxiao is the mistress. Isn't this a real scumbag? Sometimes I really can't understand it. Obviously, he has a wife who controls everything, but he still has to go out and cheat on her. Isn't this just wasting a good life? Gu Xiaoxiao is really a bitch, knowing about the third wife. I have always held these students in contempt. 10 minutes ago, even though they knew it in their hearts, no one dared say such things for fear of offending Li Howren's status. They knew that Li Howren was Tang Sini's husband long ago, and it was only because of the Tang family's connections that they treated Li Howren with such deference. Now that Li Howren has been exposed, they have one after the other come forward to accuse him. Gu Xiaoxiao is shocked once again. She walks over to Li Haoran. Didn't you say that you had already completed the divorce procedures with Tang Xini? You lied to me again, and let so many classmates stab me in the back in front of me. You called me your mistress. Li Haoran was furious, and pushed Gu Xiaoxiao away. Get out of the way. Gu Xiaoxiao sat down on the ground with a thud, and at that moment, the joy she had felt just now when she had cooperated with Li Haoran to frame me was gone, and she crouched on the ground and sobbed quietly. How can you prove it? Li Haoran was completely flustered at this point, and his speech began to stutter. Heh. The British lawyer sneered while placing his credentials and power of attorney on the table. I am not only your uncle's lawyer, but also your uncle's best friend during his lifetime. Your uncle was a non-maritalist, and he always trained you as his successor. But you have an evil heart, and you remember how many evil deeds you have done abroad, don't you? It was your uncle who knew that you had questionable morals. You have always coveted your uncle's manor and his huge fortune, and you even tried to poison him. That's why he refused to give you his inheritance. In order to continue the family line, the elderly man could only leave his sperm in the sperm bank of our British fraternity hospital, and entrusted me to help him raise the next generation. But you still stole it when no one was looking. How did your uncle treat you? And how did you treat your uncle? Can material things really outweigh your blood ties? You have to understand that if your uncle had not protected you, you would have been imprisoned in a British prison for rape when you were at university. You don't know how to be grateful, and you even plot against your dead uncle. Your moral character is really bad. In fact, your uncle left you 30% of his inheritance in his will, provided that you do not do anything. There was another round of uproar in the courtroom. My goodness, this is outrageous. You murdered your own uncle for money. You're no human being, you're an animal. I never thought you were a good guy, and you even committed the shameful crime of rape in the UK. Uncle Lin was thinking of him before he died. What an ungrateful person. 6. Now, whether Li Haoran is in the UK or in China, he will be punished by the law. Whether it was stealing sperm or finding a surrogate, they were all real crimes, and he had just admitted it himself. Li Haoran was furious. He knew that he had no way out now, and in a fit of rage, he picked up an ashtray and charged at the British lawyer. Gu Xiaoxiao knew that Li Haoran had already committed a major crime, and if he hurt someone else, he would probably never get out of prison. Gu Xiaoxiao wrapped her arms around Li Haoran's waist and tried to stop him. Haoran, the mistake you have made is already big enough, don't make any more mistakes. No matter how long you have to go to jail for, I am willing to wait for you outside. Li Haoran seemed to have found an outlet for his anger, and he grabbed Gu Xiaoxiao by the collar. The ashtray fell directly on Gu Xiaoxiao's head. It's all your fault, everything started because of you. You slut, why did you seduce me, and insist on having my child? Bitch, I'm going to kill you. Li Haoran smashed fist after fist into Gu Xiaoxiao's face. Gu Xiaoxiao's mouth and nose were bleeding, but she still held him tightly and pleaded. Haoran, I know you can't accept this at once. Calm down, I'm your wife. Even if you cheat on me many times, I'm still willing to be with you. You are not my wife. You are Xiao Jianyu's wife. Aren't you engaged? Hurry up and marry him, you bitch, what's the point of tangling with me? You are not my wife, and I have never treated you as my wife. You are just a reproductive tool that I have used and finished with. A life was about to be lost. The British lawyer danced and shouted towards the door. Police. China police. At this point, 4 police officers in uniform rushed into the room and restrained Li Haoran. It was obvious that the British lawyer had arranged this in advance. The British lawyer told the police the whole story, and the police said that, regardless of anything else, just the fact that he had hired a surrogate in China was enough for conviction. At the critical moment, Tang Xini arrived. Tang Xini nodded at me, then went up to the British lawyer and called out. Uncle Michael. Li Haoran cried with a runny nose. Wife, these people want to arrest me, they want to take me to prison, you have to save me. I was wrong, I really know that I was wrong. Will you forgive me? On the face of our marriage, you won't not save me, right? Tang Xini teased and smiled. Don't worry, I'm here. Hearing these words, Li Haoran's mind settled slightly. Instantly, he looked like a dog with a master who supports him, his eyes beginning to shine. Tang Xini came up to Li Haoran, and her tone immediately became cold, her high heels stomping on Li Haoran's head. Li Haoran, do you remember when you married me, I told you the price of cheating. When we got married, my father didn't approve, and he investigated your background, saying that you have an evil heart and are prone to extreme actions. But I didn't believe him at the time, and even though I fell out with my family, I chose to be with you. This is how you repay me. I didn't finish what I was saying just now, but don't worry, I'm here, and I'll make sure you do 2 more years in prison. Tang Sini looked at the police officer and said, Comrade policeman, tell your leader that there is no need to look at the Tang family's face to handle this matter. I have already completed the divorce procedures with him, and he is no longer my Tang family's son-in-law. Sini, you can't just leave me alone. In the end, amidst Li Haoran's desperate cries, she was taken back to the police station by the police. The people present were talking among themselves, overwhelmed by the many reversals that had taken place in such a short period of time. It was no less exciting than watching a Hollywood blockbuster. Gu Xiaoxiao came to me on her knees. She was in a terrible state, having been beaten up by Li Haoran, the man she had been pining for, and she no longer looked like the school beauty she once was. She was remorseful and told me about her mistakes, begging for my forgiveness and wanting to get back together with me. But I no longer had any thoughts of that, because she had betrayed me with another man, and she had even gotten pregnant by someone else while we were together. Her heart was no longer with me, and I found that hard to accept. Jianyu, you once said that you would love me forever, and you swore to the heavens. Don't you remember? Do you really not love me anymore? Without waiting for me to answer, my classmates, who had abandoned me like a scorpion leaving its shell, spoke up one after the other. Jianyu, go home quickly, don't be soft-hearted. His wife is the only daughter of a wealthy family, spoiled since childhood, afraid of pain, and unwilling to give birth to Li Haoran. I nodded to the crowd and walked out of the private room with a bit of loneliness in my heart. The woman I once loved deeply was actually used by another man as a tool for procreation in the fight for inheritance. 7. Li Haoran was sentenced to 7 years and 6 months in prison. He was punished in a way. Gu Xiaoxiao was considered to have benefited from the misfortune. After all, she became pregnant with the Li family's lineage. Not long after, the baby was born successfully, and she and the child received all of the Li family's inheritance. Many years later, there was a major piece of news in the city. It turned out that after Li Haoran was released from prison, he found Gu Xiaoxiao and demanded the Li family's property. Gu Xiaoxiao could not let go of what happened back then for a long time. She could not accept being used as a breeding tool by Li Haoran, and naturally refused. In the ensuing struggle, Li Haoran accidentally stabbed Gu Xiaoxiao to death. Li Haoran, who had just been released from prison, was arrested again and 2 days later was executed. Watching such a shocking news, I felt a little sad, but more relieved for myself from years ago. It doesn't matter if these 2 people die, it's just the poor child. In the end, the Li family's assets were divided according to the old man's will, and Tang Sini didn't want any of it, donating it all to the Red Cross. The most innocent child in the whole thing, at the age of 7 or 8, when they needed their parents' love the most, was sent to an orphanage. My heart is full of mixed emotions. Looking back, no matter how hard I tried, Gu Xiaoxiao's heart was always taken up by someone else. The person that Gu Xiaoxiao loved with all her heart first cheated her out of her feelings for personal gain, even beat her up when disaster struck, and finally took her life for money. Fortunately, it's all in the past, and the past is officially turned over. I have a wife and children, and I want to forget these unhappy things and live for them. I have always firmly believed that bad things will not always happen to me. After several years of hard work, I have become a company executive with an annual income of millions. Right now, what I need to do well is to educate and raise my children well, grow old with my wife, and try to spend every day with my family. End.